If you're a PM, you want to know which companies and levels you should apply for, or which seniority, then this video is for you. Let me start out by saying that a lot of this stuff on the job description level is pretty made up and arbitrary. There's no real minimum years of experience you should have on anything. It really all depends on whether you understand the thing, whether you've done the thing before. But beyond that, people are pretty much guessing. 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, who really knows? Has there ever been any objective tests that we've done to find out that, oh yes, at the 10-year mark, that's when you really learn how to do this thing? No, of course not. It's just sort of a made-up little gate to stop the majority of people from applying. Actually, this is the first filter that people hit when they start browsing for jobs. This one asks for 3 years, this one for 5, this one for 10. What do I actually do? So for now, let's just basically ignore the year's experience and instead focus on what the job actually wants us to do. If you imagine the hiring manager for most of these roles these days, they're just going to ask ChatGPT to create a job description based on a few prompts that they give it. Oh, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I think they're going to be doing. Could you please put together a job description? And then ChatGPT will, of course, put together a job description, and then the hiring manager will go and add 1, 2, or 3 things, maybe tweak a couple things to really highlight the main things that they think this candidate needs. And then they'll make up a year's experience number and put it on the job. But when they think about the level that they put for the job description, it is based on an internal set of rubrics of how each company thinks about leveling. And mainly that has to do with a few things. It has to do with the scope. How big is this thing that you're going to be working on? How important it is to the company, how broad it is, and how many other orgs and teams it touches. How many other people you influence, whether cross-functionally or in direct management. How much tactical or strategic work do you do? Pretty much everything that you think about in a level fits into those 3 criteria. If you're working on product features, small features, then big features, then maybe product lines, then maybe the entire portfolio, you can see how the level will change depending on the scope of work you take on. So the scope is a real part of the leveling selection. Leadership and people management is another true aspect of the level. At level 4, junior, to level 6 or 7, senior or group, you're going to be managing cross-functionally and your own direct different groups of people. That is also a true reality, a true requirement. If you've never managed 5 or 10 or 20 people before, it's going to be hard for you to fit into this particular role. And finally, the strategy piece, if you primarily work on launching, executing day-to-day things, as opposed to thinking about quarterly roadmaps or annual roadmaps or bringing big groups of people and big orgs together to launch something really big across the whole company, that is also going to be a real responsibility area and a real determinant in the level of the position. Those 3 buckets are real years of experience, and pretty much everything in the job description is not that important. So when you're looking at these jobs, as you're looking through the job description, try to find the 3 most important elements that you think the hiring manager put in there, and then try to rank these jobs in those 3 buckets. How much is it? What's the scope? Feature level, product level, company level? What is the leadership component? Do you lead cross-functional teams? Are you just working by yourself? Or are you leading a group of 5 or 7? Or are you supposed to lead a group of people that have their own reports? And then the third component is strategy. How much in there is about doing something across a long time horizon or across multiple orgs? Or is it just a relatively small, relatively tactical area of responsibility? As you think about these 3 buckets, think also about your own career. How much have you done in each of these 3 areas? What have you worked on? What has been the scope? How many people have you worked with? What has been the time horizon? Rank yourself where you are, and then you can kind of develop stretch opportunities for yourself based on your experience, but you largely understand that the work you've done in the past will determine how you're perceived by the hiring manager or recruiter, because if you've done this before, that's the best determinant that you're going to be successful again. That's a little bit about the leveling component. Now, different companies will have different names for it. They're going to call it lead PM or staff PM or senior PM or group or principal. Ignore that for the most part. You can find out how the bigger companies that have a little bit of a more well-defined rubric, you can find out how they think about it. But for most companies, it doesn't necessarily have a rhyme or a reason to it. You just have to look at the job description and figure out what they're trying to tell you the scope and the area of responsibility the management leadership is going to be. And based on that, figure out if you're a good fit or not. And if you've done that, you pretty much understand where you are, and you've calibrated that with a coach or someone else that understands these things. I'm talking about, again, scope of work, the leadership component, people management, and the strategy component, because sometimes we tend to self-assess ourselves incorrectly, either too much, we overassess how much we've done, or too little. We have a bit of an imposter syndrome, or I haven't done that much really. So you have to make sure you get calibrated, get a second opinion on this, preferably someone that understands what they're doing or has been involved in coaching and product management, or even at least someone that has just product management experience, preferably senior. Once you get that, combine that with your self-assessment, and you have an idea of which roles from a leveling perspective you can apply for. Remember, you can stretch a little bit. If you've done a certain amount of people management work and this role in particular asks for maybe a little bit more of people management, and it is called the director of product or senior director of product or even head of product, it doesn't matter. Look at the job description, not the title, not the number of years experience. Now let's talk about the company selection. Let's talk about companies in a few broad buckets. The first one is your big tech companies. These are the publicly traded companies. There's maybe 100 or 200 of them. You know of them. You use their products pretty much every day, whether they're B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter. They're big companies. They're publicly traded. Their equity is liquid. Their compensation is large. They have huge scope and impact. Pretty much everybody wants to work for them. That's the first bucket. Second bucket are your up-and-coming startups. These are late-stage startups. Usually, I'm talking Stripe. These are companies that you might not even think of them as startups because they've been around for so long, 10 years or more. They're late-stage startup. They're not publicly traded yet. They're still growing. They have very strong product market fit. Maybe they're just thinking about an IPO. It's a bit of a separate bucket because the compensation there is not quite where it needs to be. They're still a little bit more nimble, not quite as nimble as a startup, but not as slow as some of the entrenched top tech companies. The third bucket are your mid-stage or early stage startups. Primarily mid-stage, I'm talking about companies that have found product market fit. Instead of saying early stage and mid-stage, let me just say pre-product market fit, post-product market fit. And just to remind you, product market fit means people want your products or services, and you don't have to spend most of your time trying to convince them to buy your stuff because it already kind of works. People already want it. There could be still an issue of growth and scaling, but at least you're not trying to solve a problem of what do we sell? What problem do we actually solve? So those are the two other buckets that I think about. And let's divide them: pre-product market fit, post-product market fit startups. Pretty much all the companies you're going to be applying to will fall somewhere in those four buckets. So how do you think about where you should apply? Let's think about what is important for you and what is important for those companies, because we've got to find the sweet spot between those two in order to facilitate a match. So what's important for you? If you're planning to build a long and successful and financially rewarding product career, then you do want to work in the top tech companies, at least for a while. You need to get the recognizable tech names, you need to get the opportunities that they open up, and frankly, you need the compensation because they just pay more than anyone else and more than you can likely make by yourself, even if you do a successful startup. So if you haven't yet worked in these top tech companies, then this is a top priority for you, both because of the names, the recognizable names that you get from them, and the compensation. If you have worked for them, then really bigger opportunities are available. So bigger tech companies in that list, and that bucket number one. But also you can pretty much travel anywhere you want. You can get stronger interest from late stage startup like Stripe. You can get stronger interest from post product market fit startups, and you may get stronger interest from pre product market fit startups. But they sometimes think that top tech PMs are too used to building slowly and they can't execute fast enough, and so they may not be particularly excited about you if you've got top tech on your resume. But everybody else in groups 2 and 3 are going to be more excited, so you have a lot of opportunities to choose from there. So you can have your pick of companies, and here you can optimize for a scope of work, you can optimize for the type of work, so something you're passionate or excited about, or compensation or role or title, meaning responsibility. If you're in this camp and you're not necessarily targeting compensation, again, because once you get into the bucket of mercenary PM work where you're trying to get more and more compensation each time, it's hard to get away from the top tech companies. But assuming compensation is not number one most important thing for you, then you could target to go to a smaller company like those in buckets 2 or 3, and then pick up additional experience that you may not have had. For instance, strategic experience or leadership, people management experience. That could be harder to get, but your recognizable names could allow you to step in there and kind of punch above your weight a little bit and maybe apply for a position which calls for people management, but you don't have that experience exactly, but you've got big tech recognizable names in there, so you can get your foot in the door and then maybe make a case for being able to take on those additional responsibilities. So you can basically leverage the recognizable names in order to build yourself some extra skills or some extra experiences along the lines that you will need later. And then finally, if you're early career, then really you should be targeting everyone, but realistically, if you have no recognizable names, expect to land somewhere in those buckets number 3 or 4, pre or post product market fit startups, and use them to rapidly develop your skill set of experience in a particular vertical or industry, or actually just build out your resume from an impact perspective. Impactful bullets, lots of dollars, lots of usage, lots of experiments, lots of launches, things like that. So it all really depends on where you are that will determine what your top picks are. Wherever you are, I do recommend keeping your options pretty open and just scanning every day for the opportunities that come up. You never really know until you have that recruiter conversation of what the needs are, what the specifics are, and where there may be an opportunity for you to advance your career and work with some interesting companies. And then now we get to the final point, which is what those companies are looking for. If you're a top tech recruiter or hiring manager, primarily you're looking for proven experience. And that usually means other recognizable top tech names. That's going to be your biggest marker of success. And after that, of course, relevant experience, relevant skill set. You've done this thing, you know how to do this thing. If instead you're a late stage company recruiter or hiring manager, you don't necessarily care about the recognizable names. You care primarily about the thing that is happening. So you care about impactful up-and-comers. So that's what you're going to optimize for. Of course, recognizable names don't hurt here either, but that's not the only thing you're going to look for. You're really going to look for that domain expertise and experience around that problem, the core problem that you have. And then when you go to bucket 3 and bucket 4, if you're a pre or post product market fit recruiter, really you're just looking for people that execute. Enthusiastic, excited product managers that just have an affinity for execution. So you're looking for people that have delivered results, that are frankly going to just push to get their foot in the door and have a conversation with you or your product leaders, and those that see the problems and are excited about delivering the solutions. Their recognizable names don't necessarily help quite as much, especially in the pre-product market fit, because sometimes, again, they might think you're too slow if you've worked for Google in the past, and they wouldn't be wrong. So in that respect, your tenacity will determine to a large extent how many recruiters from those buckets 3 and 4, pre and post product market fit, small startups, you can actually speak to. Think about how to apply to which companies and which level. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And if you're looking for your next role, please use the link in the description to schedule a time to talk with our team about possibly joining the accelerator, see if we could team up, help you do it a little bit better. Thanks very much. See you next time.